Okay, everybody got a screen?
Yep.
All right. Being the appointed hour, I call the commission to us getting started here. Can we have a roll call?
Yes, ma'am. Let's start with James Bisbee.
Here.
Annette Stone.
Here.
Jim Morrison.
Here.
Trip York.
Here.
Ruth Cox.
Present.
Tim Thompson.
Here.
Candace Sullivan.
Present.
Tony Bryant.
Present.
And one remaining person who's been appointed but not yet sworn in is Molly Bales. So I don't know if that counts as absent or excused or otherwise. Otherwise, we'll take that one.
Okay.
So we do have a quorum.
Okay, we have a quorum. And while we're on who's here, we have two new members. We have Jim here, who we were just discussing has been here before. And we have our dear person here who was here last week, and he's been here before. So we're glad to have these two new members. And then is there some date in sight when Molly's going to get herself sworn in and talked to?
I do not know.
You don't know about that yet? Okay. Do I hear a motion to dispense with the reading of the minutes?
So move.
We have a motion down there. Do we have a second?
Second.
Have a second over here. All of those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. All of those nays? Hear none. The motion passes. Okay. Let us then go to adjustments to the agenda if we have any. We have two applications tonight. We have 317 East Front Street. Are you here? That's you. And then we have 221 South Front Street here, and that's you.
Yes, ma'am.
Right? Okay. And you're here for what, ma'am? Oh, yeah, that's right. You're going to help him. Okay. All right. So we don't have to make any adjustments tonight. Okay, so can we have the anyone who wants to speak? You all, we'll get you all going with that in a moment. Okay, so let me talk about the hearings here. The Historic Preservation Commission is a public commission appointed by the City of New Bern's Board of Aldermen. It is responsible for preserving and safeguarding New Bern's locally designated historic districts, downtown and Riverside, based on U.S. Department of Interior standards, state statutes, city ordinances, and New Bern's historic guidelines. Two of the major tasks of the HPC include approving applications for a certificate of appropriateness and preventing demolition of historic structures due to neglect. The HPC holds a quasi-judicial hearing on an application for a certificate of appropriateness. The Commission hears sworn testimony and evidence provided by the applicant, by parties who received notice of the hearing, and by others who can justify that they have relevant evidence and are directly affected by the application. The Commission cannot consider comments based on personal likes or dislikes, hearsay, or personal opinion that cannot be directly related to specific historic guidelines. Likewise, commissioners shall refrain from stating personal opinion, personal likes or dislikes, or hearsay during a hearing. The Commission's decision on an application is based solely on testimony and evidence presented at a hearing that directly relates to the historic guidelines. So those of you who wish to speak tonight, if you will please go and get sworn in.
Please come forward. Raise your right hand. You swear to tell the truth to the best of your knowledge? Okay, please sign, print, and your name and your title.
Hey. You've been working on that house again. No, I had a little fun. They won't be there much longer. It's getting late.
They're cleaning.
So here's how we will proceed. The HP administrator will provide an overview of the application. The applicant or the representative presents the application. Proponents and opponents who receive notice of the hearing can present evidence. Rebuttal is allowed by the applicant and by the proponents and opponents who receive notice. Others who can justify that they have relevant information and will be directly affected can present evidence. The HPC administrator presents the staff's findings and their recommendations. The applicant or their representative has an opportunity to make any final comments they would like to make. The commissioners discuss the evidence and may ask for clarification from the applicant or the presenters. The chairman calls for a motion to approve or deny the application with stated finding of fact. The motion is discussed by the commission. The chairman calls for a vote on the motion by the commission. A COA can be approved. It can be approved with conditions. It can be continued, or it can be denied. So let us go to the first application that we have, which is East Front Street, 317 East Front Street.
Okay, here we have the first application for 317 East Front Street. You can see it's fully filled out, and now okay. Okay, that's the problem. That was the first page. The second page is a photograph of the second page. So we'll look at that. And we see it's been signed and dated. And then we'll zoom back to a more reasonable size. Move over. Ooh, still not large enough. Okay, and here we have the photos of the front facade of the building. The application is to add rolling storm shutters to the front of the middle unit here, just at the bottom front door, and the double doors that are on the two balconies that are there in the center unit. And so this is a close-up view of the existing front door. And then on the right is a close-up view of the top header across the top doors. Sorry, the header across the upper third floor doors. Showing the keystone, and this is a detail from there, showing essentially what is going to be relevant is the detail on the side, the black area, and the materials and the sizes of the recess here. And then the next one just shows the damage that was done during Florence, depicting the river lapping up against the wall out front, covering entirely East Front Street, and blowing in their front door to demonstrate the power and the reasoning for needing the roll-up doors. So these are examples of similar roll-up screens. On the left photo, it's here on the left, you can see them over the windows. They're also over the sliding glass doors, but they're hard to see in the shadows. Also did an enlargement on the right of those windows. And you can see it's essentially a metal box at the top of the door windows here. And there's also in that overall example on the left, the sliding doors also have the similar screen device over the doorway, which you can see now on the right-hand side. The next one shows screens closed over a set of windows on this other structure here, to give you an idea what they look like when they're closed, and how you can see how they need to have rails on the side in order to keep the shutters closed and tight. In this case, you can see a little bit from the side on the left or right ones what the approximate size of those of that box is for those. And here's another example from somewhere else showing by essentially painting it out or painting it to the same color as the existing materials. It is not necessarily so obtrusive as one might think. And here's some of the details. So for the top and for the bottom. And then the applicant also provided some emails from neighbors. Mr. Scott Davis said it was fine with me as well, responding to the other neighbor who also said, we think it's a good idea to support your efforts to protect your home. And so then we have, in addition to that information, we have the zoning and inspections review. So for 317 East Front Street, it's in the C2 district, and so it does meet the requirements of the land use ordinance, and it will not require a building permit. And then we have our findings and recommendations when you're ready.
Okay.
I will add that the applicant was asked to provide a little bit more information from the manufacturer about the size and dimensions of the individual pieces. They have provided that, however, it is proprietary information apparently, so I can pass it around when and if you're ready.
You're going to pass that around to
Yes.
us? Okay, when we get to a discussion. All right, thank you, sir. So are there any conflicts of interest among any of us for this project? Okay. Are there any issues with the application's completeness? Seeing none for either one of those. Ma'am, do you wish to add anything else at this time? I don't. Okay. So, looking at the audience, I don't see any opponents or proponents for this project. I mean, there's hardly anybody in the audience. There's only 3 of you out here, and you're here for which project?
For the next one.
For the next one, right. So there's no proponents, there's no opponents, there's nobody with relevant evidence that has standing, and there are no state, city, or government body people out there that I see. So let us move on then to staff findings.
Okay. So, for 317 East Front Street, there is no historic property name because it is a non-contributing structure. It is not in the National Register inventory, and it is not in the Sandbeck book. So, 317 East Front Street, the proposal is to include new roll-up storm screen doors in the primary AVC. Staff submits the following historic district guidelines are appropriate to this application. For modifications, 3.2.1. For windows, doors, and openings, 4.2.4. For metals, 5.3.3 and 5.3.4. The statements of reason based on the information contained in the application and staff's judgment are: 1, the project is located in the tight weave development pattern. 2, the proposal is a modification project in the primary AVC of a non-contributing resource. 3, the proposed design components and materials meet the requirements of the guidelines. 4, the zoning administrator and the chief building official have reviewed this proposed amendment and commented accordingly. And 5, the project is not incongruous with the guidelines. So staff recommends the commission approve this application to include new roll-up storm screen doors in the primary AVC.
So ma'am, do you have anything else to add at this time? No. So could you pass around to the commissioners just so they have it if they'd like to view it, the information that we can't share everywhere.
So they look exactly the same, except the dimension for this, the first one, so if we keep it in order,
Okay,
is for the front door.
okay, that's the single door,
Correct.
right?
And you see that at the bottom of the drawing for the screen.
Okay,
See, this is 38, 37 and some inches.
okay,
And then the other one is simply 64 inches. So
all right.
otherwise, they're identical,
They're identical.
other than their height and width.
Well, at design review, we had a great discussion about these blind type apparatuses that are gonna put on these doors and why. And that somewhat is why we don't have a lot of questions about that at this time. Does anybody, other than these dimensions, does anybody else have any questions that they want to ask at this time? Anybody?
I'd like to see the,
Okay, it's coming your way. Okay, so this is the only other thing that we wanted to see.
I do have one question for Matt. And just, you may be reminding me of this. Your recommendation under metals, 5.3.3, 5.3.4, are we sure of the material? As far as
So
the two
I wasn't at the time,
styles?
I was not at the time that I wrote the recommendations.
Okay.
So the material should be listed on that sheet, but if someone wants to check that for me.
So you don't know.
Otherwise, the application sometimes tells you as well.
Don't recall seeing it in the application,
Right.
but knowing how these things are put together, it's typically like a powder-coated metal,
Aluminum. They're aluminum.
Okay. Doesn't say.
Doesn't say.
And for what it's worth, I do recall several years ago, the Doubletree submitted an application for these types of roll-down storm protection windows. I think it was on the addition to the Doubletree.
I believe it may have also been the former jail also had something like that.
Yes, correct. I remember that as well.
Is the Doubletree the one at the bottom of Middle Street?
Yes, with
Yeah,
the-
and they did, but I don't know that they ever put them up, did they?
I don't know, I remember we approved
Yeah,
it.
no, yeah, I know we talked about it, but I'm not sure that they've ever put those up.
now all those doors on the end are coming down.
Second?
Now they're making all those doors, those French doors, windows.
Oh, okay.
That's on the annex.
The end, yeah.
Okay, has everyone looked at the?
I don't think it's gotten all the way around yet.
Yes, it has.
Yep.
Oh, it has?
It
Oh,
has.
sorry.
I didn't catch it.
Oh,
Oh,
sorry.
I'm sorry.
Sorry, we left Jim in.
See?
I knew it had gotten that far.
So while this is going around, it seems staff has picked up on guideline 3.2.1 in my assessment, which, obviously I'm not aware of a historic precedent necessarily for storm shutters, although I guess we could construe blinds and shutters in the conventional sense as a predecessor. But more importantly, I would argue that essentially this is infill construction at the time it was built. And I think the important part to make note of in the record, in my opinion, is that guideline 3.4.3, as it relates to infill construction, just states use of modern materials is acceptable as a means of continuing the evolution of architecture through time.
And what number is that? It's what?
3.4.3.
3.4.3. So you want to add that into the application?
Well, at least make it part of the record, because I believe if this were a contributing structure, we would probably have a much different discussion tonight.
Yes, yes.
So that was in what subject or what department? 3.4.3
Yeah,
Yes.
3.4.
in infill?
Guidelines for infill construction.
Mhm. Jim, did you get a chance to look?
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, and you're all satisfied?
Yep.
Okay. So any other discussion by anyone at this point in time? Any other questions? Okay. So, we need to add in, this other, guideline, whoever's gonna make the recommendation, put in, under modification 3.4.3. Okay? So, no other discussion at this time then? Okay.
And I would suggest that then we also remove 5.3.3 since we've now identified that it's one material, aluminum, and not iron and steel.
Okay, so we're gonna add 3.4.3, and we're gonna drop 5.3.3.
4.
It's 3, I think,
I'm sorry.
isn't it? 5.3.3?
Yep.
Right.
I agree, I'm
Correct.
sorry.
Okay, so add 3.4.3, drop 5.3.3. All right, so are we ready for a motion? Who will make the motion?
I can do it.
Okay, all right.
So I moved to find an application for 317 East Front Street, not to be incongruous with New Bern's Code Ordinance Sections 15.411-15.429 and New Bern's Historic District Guidelines based on the following specific guidelines and findings of fact. The project is located in a tight weave development pattern. Can you scroll up for me now?
What? Oh, I'm sorry.
The proposal is a modification project in the primary AVC of a non-contributing resource. The proposed design, components, materials meet the requirements of the guidelines. The zoning administrator and chief building official have reviewed this proposed amendment and commented accordingly. The project is not incongruous with the guidelines. And I guess I skipped over the findings, the guidelines. Modifications, 3.2.1 and 3.4.3. Metals, 3.3.3.
We need to
Oh,
drop that.
You
Uh,
mean 5.3?
3.3.4.
Yes.
Okay.
And did you want to include 4.2.4?
Under modifications, I did say 3.4.3 for infill.
Yes. Did you want to include 4.2.4 for windows, doors, and openings?
Okay, sorry. Windows, doors, and openings, 4.2.4.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, so we've had a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Have a second over here. Any other discussion at this time? Okay, so let us then vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none. This motion passed. Do we have a motion to issue a COA?
So moved.
Have a
Second.
motion over here. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second over here. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, the motion passed. Okay, so you're all ready to go. Okay, all right. Here are these specs, if you need these specs back.
I hope you don't have to use them.
Right, that's my thought, exactly. Never need to use them at all.
Yeah, very respects for that.
I hope it was off or not.
That actually sets us up so that we won't need it, right, if I read prepared.
Okay, so you'll be hearing from Matt then. Okay, you're certainly welcome. Thank you for bringing such good information to our design review. It made this night go very easy and very simple. Thank you so much. Okay, so our next project is 321 South Front Street.
Madam Chair, I have a conflict. I'll be presenting the proposed amendments to a previously issued COA.
Okay, so can I have a motion to recuse our dear co-chair?
Motion
So
to
moved.
Recuse?
So move.
Yes.
So moved? Good. We have a se-
With the justification that he is the presenter of the application.
Yes. Thank you for that. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second over there. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, we will let you recuse yourself.
Thank you.
Okay? So, sir, if we can hear about this application, and then we'll hear from our presenters.
Okay, so we'll start this one with a view of the existing COA for this project, which was issued back in January. And besides the fact that it was issued for the project overall, to include a one-story addition and site modifications, there were 4 conditions that were also listed. I'll just read them real quick. Construction shall not begin until the project is compliant with the city's land use ordinance as determined by the city zoning administrator. 2, construction shall not begin until the project complies with the flood ordinance as determined by the city's inspections department. 3, the applicant present a landscape design plan to the HPC at a later time. And 4, the kitchen exhaust hoods and other external mechanical appurtenances not be installed until reviewed by the HPC at a later time. All right. So why is this not? There we go. So we now have the next, the first page of the project submission. Shows the site location and a very small site map, so we'll skip that and move to the larger site map. Noted is that South Front Street is at the top of the page on the left, the site map on the left. And you see there's also a front called the north elevation and a back called the south elevation, and a couple of details on here. To note for this amendment to the COA is that there have been some changes in the upper left of the site, as well as in the lower left of the new addition. I'm circling it here. And then also to the lower right, this small little bump out here on the building. You can't see it on the plan here, but a change here in the doorway in this location in the upper right. So it's upper left, upper right, lower right. Okay. So these are some elevations of the existing building. And now this is a cutaway elevation, removing some of the very back part of the building so you can see what's happening close up to the addition. With the exception that on the right is a cutout of the, I'm going to make this bigger. The cut, as it were, slices right through the new addition that is one of the subjects of this amendment. See, it says mechanical 116. They've added a new mechanical room in that bump out that I mentioned earlier. Then on the left, now this is looking from the street with the front wall on the left removed. There is, as you can see, a double door in the middle, but there's also a door on the right side here of the new construction on the left of the existing building. So we'll be talking about that as well. And then on the right, there is a new brick wall and then a new platform behind that with some balustrade railing here, and that is where the mechanical units are going to be placed, or proposed to be placed. On this side, this is now the left side, or the east elevation, essentially facing the parking lot for the convention center. And the changes here are on the left-hand corner. That bump out is shown here as this basically extension of the building. Just it matches the other rest of the building. And I think there was a change to a light fixture and a bracket over here. And let's see, I think that was it on, and here is to note some of the appurtenances, the roof appurtenances are shown here, as well as the hood exhaust for the kitchen. And then on the remaining fourth side, the right side or west elevation, right from the street, we see the brick wall and that platform with the mechanical units here on the left. There's the new hood exhaust on this side of the building. And then also, I think I forgot to mention on the last elevation, there's also now the flood vents in the bottom of the foundation wall here. And one more piece is this mechanical unit, which is sitting in a planter, which is up on essentially on the deck or the patio that's on the back of the project. So let me just go up a second so you can see the vents on the east elevation. There they are, 5 of them. All right. I guess I forgot one last thing, and we'll have to go back to this one. The barrel vault, which before was a semicircle, is now a flattened barrel, so a flattened curve. So that was the other change on this elevation. Okay, and that summarizes it on the elevations, but now what we're going to see are some three-dimensional, we have some details here, we need them, other documents, and old photographs, historic photographs, and some of the other details that were presented in the original. So here now we have the three-dimensional images. So first on the left shows the entryway to the restaurant, and you can barely see the doorway in the background here. So that's not a good help. It's not a lot of help for you on that. Then here on this one, this image is very helpful with the depiction of how that mechanical platform looks from basically a bird's eye view. And also you can see that it is behind and tucked in behind the brick wall. The brick wall is a 6-foot-high brick wall, which then steps down as it approaches, as it is in plane or coplanar with this gate here, and then continues at 4-foot-high until it meets the neighboring property. Let's see, the other item is the transformer, I guess, which is now being moved to this location behind the platform on the ground. The rest of this does not show any other new changes. Other than, I'm sorry, the 3 new trees out front to help screen that area. And this is more of a human eye view as opposed to a bird from along the street looking at that wall and deck and railing and trees combination there, as well as our exhaust hood on the wall. All right, let's see. And then we have that was image used earlier. This is now an image from the rear, and the only change here then is that mechanical unit that's in the planter that's up on this patio here. And the flattened arch. Sorry, almost forgot that again. So I'm going to go back just 1 second because we could not see the planter box and the mechanical unit very well in those, at least from those angles that were presented, and just show you on the plan view what we're talking about. Here we go. So, let's see, this is the planter we're talking about. So, as I mentioned, this is the patio that we were looking at earlier from the ground, and this planter is there, and that mechanical unit is right here. Okay, so I think that should do us on the plans. So with our zoning and inspection review, so that will not work that way. So clumsy. All right, here we go, zoning and inspection review. This is in the C1 commercial waterfront overlay. And the proposed project will require a resolution to the parking issue. And so it does not meet the requirements of the land use ordinance yet. That was one of the conditions of the original COA. And Chief Building Inspector said the proposed project will require a building permit. And then after that, we're ready with our recommendations.
Okay. So we've had one conflict of interest, but we don't have any others for this tonight. Don't have any others. Anybody, any issues on the application's completeness? Anyone? We don't have anything on that. Okay, there is nobody in our audience except for the three people who are going to present this. So there are no proponents, opponents, there's no relevant evidence of standing, there's no city, state, or government body sitting out there. So we can go then to, sir, your staff findings and your recommendations.
Okay. So now this is the findings and recommendations for 221 South Front Street, historically known as Harvey Mansion, built approximately 1798. The National Register inventory description from 2003 describes it as a federal style, 3 stories above, raised basement, 5 bays wide, paired central windows above arched entrance, interior end chimneys, and gable end parapet roof. The relevant parts from Sandbeck, which is quite lengthy, but otherwise simply indicated it was converted to apartments in the 1940s, and that was the applicant showed photographs of that in the original application and in the documents in this one. So the project is for 221 South Front Street to regarding design revisions, amendment to the approved COA, exhaust hood, flood vents, transformer relocation, planters, barrel vault, east door placement, mechanical room addition, adding a gate instead of a door, garden wall adjustment. So staff submits the following historic district guidelines are appropriate to this application for utilities 2.3.1, 2.3.2, and 2.3.6. For landscaping 2.4.3, 2.4.4. For fences and garden walls 2.5.1, 2.5.3. Design principles 3.1.1. For modifications 3.2.1. For additions 3.3.1. For foundations 4.1.4. For walls, trim, and ornamentation, 4.2.1, 4.2.2, 4.2.4. For windows, doors, and openings, 4.2.4. For roofs, 4.5.6. For decks and patios, 4.6.2. For masonry, 5.1.2. For wood, 5.2.2. For metals, 5.3.3 and 5.3.4. For paint, 5.4.2, 5.4.3, and 5.4.4. Statements of reason based on the information in the application and staff's judgment are: 1, the project is located in the dense fabric development pattern. 2, the proposal is an amendment to an approved COA. 3, the proposed design components and materials meet the requirements of the guidelines. 4, the zoning administrator and chief building official have reviewed this proposed amendment and commented accordingly. And 5, the project is not incongruous with the guidelines. So staff recommends the commission approve this application for the design revisions amendment to the approved COA, exhaust hood, flood vents, transformer relocation, planters, barrel vault, east door placement, mechanical room addition, add gate instead of door, garden wall adjustment.
Okay. Sir, do you have anything else you want to add at this time?
Just briefly, Madam Chair, members of the board, my name is Trip Ewer. I'm a principal with MBF Architects. Thank you for reviewing our application tonight. First and foremost, we're here because of condition number 4. We were asked to come back to show locations for our kitchen equipment and mechanical equipment, and we've included that information. And in the midst of prosecuting that work, enabled us to tackle air conditioning. which led us to the addition piece on the back patio to contain that equipment. And then lastly, the vast majority of remaining items are code-related items in regard to elevating condensing units in particular above floodplain, as well as the flood vents. So if you have any questions, I'll be happy to entertain those.
And you were required to make that platform that tall, right?
Correct.
Right, and so we did have this discussion at design review because this is taller than that we normally would acquire or approve, but you have no choice but to put it at this height. And so we did discuss extensively about the bushes that would be in the front of it or something to screen that. And you'll be coming back to us with what you're doing with your plannings about that.
That is correct, as well as the other two items which relate to permitting.
Right, but you do see that on the design that they have to kind of cover that up, and we also talked about different types of railing that might go around there as well. So I just want to make that point so everybody's clear why we are being forced to accept this in some sense. So, anybody else, any questions they want to ask at this time? Okay. So does someone want to make a motion? And the 4 recommendations that you had before that were attached to the COA, those still exist, right? So those would have to be included in our approval tonight, but those are still existing.
Yes, except for the fourth one, of course, which is the one that
Could you show those to us up
Yep.
here on your screen again? Yeah, because that's mainly why he came back.
Right. So the fourth one is that the kitchen exhaust hoods and other
Right.
external mechanical appurtenances not be installed until reviewed by the HPC at a later time. You will have now reviewed it.
Right.
So,
This is our later time now. So 4 does not exist now, but 1, 2, and 3 exist. And I think 3 is the landscape design that you have to bring back to us.
correct.
And
So-
also, Madam Chair, just by way of reminder, the design review meeting is not a part of this record for this application in the quasi-judicial sense. So it may be pertinent, or this might be the appropriate time for you all to flesh out the design review conversation about that wall so that that information and that deliberation is a part of the record for today's hearing.
Okay. You're talking about the wall where the platform is?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right. So do other people on the commission have things to say about that wall and about the fact that he has to have some type of landscaping to cover the wall as well as the fence around the platform? We had extensive discussion about that in design review, and I believe you understand that.
I do, and perhaps if it's appropriate, I could help us get started by reminding you our approach. Previously, the previous use of that building had all the kitchen equipment in the same place that we've consolidated all the condensing units for the air conditioners, where we've raised them up above floodplain. And our thinking being that we'd rather have all that in one place where we could treat it as one piece or aspect of the design, as opposed to having individual condensing units on what might be inordinately tall platforms scattered across the site. So by bringing them together, we thought that might be a better design solution. And then, of course, in the course of our work, we had to add some additional appurtenances for the kitchen equipment. And so there were a couple that staff noted during the review that are on the rooftop, and as well as one sidewall ventilator that shows up on the east side of the building. But we've tried to locate all those behind the clear story entrance that is a little taller, so that at least from a lot of vantage points, we're essentially screening that from the South Front Street right of way.
Okay. Okay. All righty.
So we also have a combination of a masonry garden wall, I'll
Yes.
call it, somewhat similar to the one we've provided in the back, again, trying to have some consistency in our site planning, and limited that to 6 feet in height because it's in a secondary area of visual concern. But then, of course, the units are somewhat prominent, perhaps, depending on one's point of view from South Front Street. So we've also added a ornamental iron balustrade, similar to what we had done on the back of the building in the work you've previously reviewed. And then finally, we've included the landscaping. I'm going to call them understory type trees to give you some sense of scale,
Okay.
so that we can try to buffer that as much as possible from the sidewalk that would be adjacent to it.
Right, and we can have this discussion again when you bring back the landscape design. So we can have that. Ma'am, is that what you were talking about, that us give more detail to?
Absolutely, those facts are important, and so long as you all find that those components of the design are not incongruous with the guidelines, and you have statements of reason to support that, findings of fact, that would be appropriate.
Okay. Right, so does someone want to make a motion, being sure that you include and keep the 1, 2, 3 conditions that are already included in this application?
I'd be happy to do that.
Thank you.
I move that we find the application for a proposed amendment to the certificate of appropriateness for 221 South Front Street be not incongruous with New Bern's Code of Ordinance, sections 15-411 to 15-429, and New Bern's Historic District Guidelines, based on the following specific guidelines and findings of fact. Utilities 2.3.1, 2, and 6. Landscaping 2.4.3 and 4. Fences and garden walls 2.5.1 and 2.5.3. Design principles 3.1.1. Modifications 3.2.1. Additions 3.3.1. Foundations 4.1.4. Walls, trim, and orientation 4.2.1, 2, and 4. Windows and doors and openings 4.2.4. Roofs 4.5.6. Decks and patios 4.6.2. Masonry 5.1.2. Wood 5.2.2. Metals 5.3.3 and 4. Paint 5.4.2, 3, and 4. The findings of fact are as follows. The project's located in a dense fabric development pattern. The proposal is an amendment to an approved COA. The proposed design components and materials meet the requirements of the guidelines. Zoning administrator and chief building official have reviewed this proposed amendment and commented accordingly. The project's not incongruous with the guidelines. The following conditions would be added to this. Do you want me to do them by numbers or restate them?
Restate.
Restate them. Number 1, construction shall not begin until the project is compliant with the city's land use ordinance as determined by the city zoning administrator. Construction shall not begin until the project complies with the flood ordinance as determined by the city's inspections department, and the applicant present a landscaping design plan to the HPC at a later time.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Second.
Have a second over here. All of those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, your motion passed. Do I have a motion to issue a COA? Is this a, that's not a COA, this is an amendment to
an
the
amendment.
COA?
That's right. So you do not need to.
No, it's not an amendment?
It is an amendment, you don't need a further motion.
Okay, all right.
All good.
Okay, so we're,
Thank you
we're
very
all-
much for your time and consideration.
Well, thank you for presenting this in great detail at design review, because we had lots and lots of questions for you at design review that made it understandable much more tonight when we went over the pictures and that thing. So we appreciate your time and effort that you gave us at design review.
Very good.
Okay, thank
Happy
you.
to do it.
So can I have a motion to bring our colleague back from his being recused?
So moved.
You move? Okay, we have a motion.
Second?
We have a second over here. All of those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, you may rejoin us, sir. Okay. So, believe it or not, those are our only 2 items tonight. So let us go to any old business that we have. Is there anything we need to bring up for there?
None.
Okay, we have no old business. We have no public left at all out in our audience. There is no one there tonight. Okay, so our next business is electing the officers. We waited until this month until we had at least 2 of our new people here. So, so it's chair and vice chair that we need to elect tonight.
Correct.
Right, okay. So, so do we just open this up to offer names for the chair and go from there?
You certainly can. You can open the floor for anyone to make a nomination.
Okay. All right. So let us start with the chair. So let's write down, and I'll make a list here of who do you want to nominate for chair. So we need the chair and the vice chair. So
Madam
who do we
Chair,
have?
I nominate Jim Bisbee for chair.
Jim for chair. Okay. Okay. Do we have any other nominations?
I nominate Tripp for vice chair.
Oh, well, we're not the vice chair yet, but
Okay.
any nominations for chair? We got to do it one at a time.
That's fine.
All right. So we have this one nomination for Jim. So do we have to ask Jim if he accepts the nomination?
Sure.
Okay.
I do.
He accepts the nomination, okay? All of those in favor say
Madam Chair,
aye.
you need a second.
Okay, I need a second. We got a second over here. All of those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. All of those opposed? Hearing none, so that passes. Now, vice chair, do you want to make your recommendation now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so we're going to do Tripp for vice chair. Does anybody else want to make another nomination? Okay, none at this time. Tripp, do you accept that nomination?
I do.
Okay. All of those in
You
favor?
need a second, Madam Chair.
Do we need a second?
A
Second.
Second?
Or Jim.
Okay, Jim, second, okay. All of those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, hearing none, so that passes. So Jim will be our new chair, and Tripp will remain as vice chair as we move forward.
Do they take their seats immediately, or how does that work?
I think
Next
it,
meeting.
Next meeting?
the next meeting, I think, is what we've usually done, is it not?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, we
Okay.
do that at the next meeting. Okay, so, sir, do you have a report other than you've made right here? Under A, under majors, anything you want to add under majors and minors?
No, ma'am.
Okay. There's no report on the COA extensions issued, there's no report there?
No.
Okay. Other items, the next design review is going to be September the 7th. And I think you sent out an email, did you not, where there's going to be an afternoon of things online that we can review, updates and...
I think that was either today or, that was today.
It was for today.
Yeah. So,
Did
if you
anybody
didn't...
do it?
I did
Anybody
not.
do it?
No, okay.
I didn't
It
have
was-
time.
Was last minute notice that they were actually doing it on.
I didn't realize it was the day. I heard it was the more before. Okay, so none of that. There's a site visit inside the Elks
Oh,
building.
wait, no. So the item number 1 has more to do with, the last meeting, at the design review meeting, we had discussed how the new members were getting training, and there was some interest in actually having the entire commission do the training at the next design review meeting.
Mhm.
So it's up to you if you still want to do that. So you can, that's why that's on the agenda.
Oh, okay. So what is y'all's thought about all of that?
It always helps.
That was the way I would conduct, not the Historic Preservation Commission, I did that when I was Economic Development Incorporated, but that you do the training with everybody once a year, that everybody sort of has an opportunity to kind of rehear and share experiences and
Okay, so what time then do we need to meet rather than 5:30?
Well, it depends what you decide. Prior to the beginning of this year, let's put it that way, we had been doing trainings on various topics, more specialized topics, before the meeting, about an hour before, using usually some kind of video of some sort, oftentimes by SHPO or sometimes by other organizations. But I think the intent here is that those were always optional trainings, obviously, and attendance was hit and miss on a lot of them. Some of them, nobody showed up. Some of them, 1 or 2 or 3 people showed up, because that was the hour before the meeting. I think the intent is that if we're going to have the whole HPC doing benefiting from this training all at once and have the discussion that would happen, it might behoove you to try and schedule it to be just an agenda item during the meeting.
Okay, so have that as part of the design review meeting is what you're suggesting?
Yes.
Start at the normal time then, what you're saying.
Right, starting at the normal time, because that's the advertised time.
Are you going to be the instructor for that, the lead instructor?
Or the facilitator, or the person who pushes the button that starts the video, or... But no, I'm actually imagining it's more like the packet of training. I think Tim and Jim have received those.
And I'm willing to provide that training. All of it is at some level. We've got one commissioner that is completely new to this, that is not with us tonight. She will need the training, and I think it would be beneficial for everyone to be able to make comments and ask questions and chime in.
Right. So, I mean, I will try and find, we have that packet of information, but you've all received that when you first started, and it is quite large. So it might be, I'll try and see if I can find something that's more along a video representing, say, the basics of an HPC, the legal issues about what is a quasi-judicial hearing. I mean, we just conducted one appropriately, but there may be some nuances that we may or may not know about, so the things about getting things in the record, for example. The swearing in and listening in the future, we may have comments, and the rules about people making comments, rules about standing, who actually is a valid person to make a comment, etc. So those might best be heard by someone, say, from the School of Government or from the SHPO. So I can see if I can find something like that for, basically the beginners. And so give us all that foundation training information to start with, especially to help Molly, being the brand new person. But maybe all the rest of us to get a refresher on some of those basics.
That PowerPoint is very good. It really does cover most of those things. It's what you add to it.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that'll be my fallback.
Madam Chair, can I make one more comment? I appreciate the fact that the other trainings weren't attended as well as you probably have wanted. I just worry about the amount of stuff on design review and
That's right.
and applicants, being pushed off into later in the evening. I mean, I would love to make sure.
No,
would you put it at the end, or?
I would suggest doing it after all the applicants have left.
Oh, yeah, we've got to do all that first.
We do not want, or anyone else for that matter, after the public comment, after everyone else has had their.
Oh, yeah, we'll do that at the end, yeah.
Okay.
Okay. And then the other item on here is the Elks Building. There's going to be a visit on the 29th at 2:30. Is that something set in stone, or?
Well, so the architect will be in town that day, and he's suggested that time. So if that works for as many of you as possible, that would be good. And to remind you why we're getting this tour is not just for kicks. The owners are proposing that the city consider the building as an official local landmark. And that has a process in order to make that happen, which includes your tour of the facility as pretty much the very first step. The process ends with the alderman approving it as a local landmark. And so there are quite a number of other steps in between. And so I can brief, maybe you have time now if you want, but I can brief you at some other time on that. But in the end, once it's a local landmark, you will be responsible now, or at that point, for ensuring that the interior also remains at historic standards. So that would be brand new for the HPC, and may also take some revisions to the guidelines in order to accomplish that in some way. There are different kinds of features inside that aren't on the outside, right? So ceiling, for example, ceilings.
May I make a suggestion?
Yes.
Since a landmark is something that I don't think the commission has ever had to do.
No.
I don't recall ever
There's no land.
having to deal with anything like that.
The city has none yet.
For the design review in a couple of weeks, the training component for that, should we try to spend some time on
We
going
could
through
do
that?
Yep.
I think we can deal with Molly's training separately. It seems like that this is something that's going to be coming along relatively quickly, and I'd really like to see us be prepared for this. I know that back in 2013, 14, we had a number of things come up related to demolition of contributing structures, and we just were not prepared at the time because that really had not been done that much.
That sounds great. Yeah. That, of course, adds some time to the training, or cause us to revise or eliminate something else in the.
Well, and what I'm proposing is that landmark status, everything that's involved with that is our training. I think the other training is less of a priority if the landmark procedures are coming up. We're going to have to go through that process.
Okay.
That's not a done deal yet, right?
No. It's really, it ends up being up to the alderman,
Yeah.
But if I remember, it starts with us.
but it starts with you.
But the
Yes.
architect, the owner is requesting it.
Yes, correct.
So there's some sort of benefit.
Well, yes.
There's some sort
So-
of
Tax benefit.
Or some whatever, there's something.
As we
there's
get
some
into
reason.
the details of the training, yes, the owners get a tax break.
Right.
result in a recommendation? Does the tour that we do result in a recommendation to the alderman?
Not directly, but eventually. So it's
So we'd have to know what we're looking at then. Yeah.
so and the reason, it's better to do this tour sooner than later is because, so I should explain, why you're going through is also not just to kind of look around and have a nice view of what's in there, but the idea is to identify, at least in your minds, or maybe with photographs that you all can take, the features of the interior that are worthy of, or possibly worthy of preservation forever. Okay? And the reason it needs to be as soon as possible is because we never know how soon they'll be removing things out of there. They may have already, but whatever may still be in there would be important to know.
So then, we're going to do this as a type of training versus looking at the HPC stuff.
Well, that is Tim's proposal.
That would be my recommendation.
That's the question
The
I'm
other-
asking, that's what I'm saying.
We can take other design reviews to deal with,
Right.
HPC training components
I got-
going
I got-
forward.
mhm, I
But it
got-
seems like this is something we need to at least familiarize ourselves with pretty quickly.
Is everybody okay with doing that at the next design review then?
Doing both is, what, I'm sorry, clear to me, are we gonna do both at that meeting?
No, that's why I'm asking.
We're gonna
the
focus
question.
on the
Landmark.
historic status of the
Landmark.
building?
No, we're going to go on the landmark issues.
Yeah, landmark
Yeah,
issues.
yeah. Okay.
And Matt, is the landmark designation in our ordinance?
It's in the code of ordinances, it's
So
not
there
in the
might be a
guidelines.
time criteria in there if
And
somebody
also,
applies?
it's in the general statutes as well.
Yeah.
So there might be, once they submit their application, we have to act, okay.
There is no application, this is how it's in its infancy, this whole issue, being the very, very first time that this has come
Well,
up.
at some point, we'll consider it requested.
Is
Right.
Is the SPO involved at all?
They
Same
will
as
be,
this?
yes,
Okay.
yeah, they get
Okay.
their 30-day review option or something.
So will John be touring the same time as us, or no?
I don't think so. I believe he's already toured it because they're also pursuing the regular tax credits. So I'm sure he's already been in there. These are different tax breaks.
Could you send us, the commission, like links to the general statute, where we might look it up in an ordinance, if anything that we could read ahead of time?
Sure. Yes.
And also, you all are a public body, so when there are a quorum of you all present and you're doing commission business, that needs to be noticed, and minutes are taken, and the public has an opportunity to participate. Not necessarily to make comments, but to view what it is that you all do. So those,
Tag along.
to tag along essentially. So those are some other legal requirements that you need to bear in mind as far as notice and those types of things.
So that other people can come on this review with us.
Is
The public.
that even going to be feasible if this is an active construction site?
That's something that we have to think through.
Yeah.
They could like tour us, like 3 of us, like little mini tours.
Yeah, I can't see the construction folks being willing to let us in along with, 40 other people.
So it may be prudent to do your tour in groups of less than a quorum.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do the tour in what?
Groups of less than a quorum, so twosies, threesies, foursies perhaps.
Okay, so do we need to decide on who's going to go then? If that's the thing? Or do we need to find out this information?
I think you might want to direct staff to consult with the building owner to
Right.
get a feel for these types of logistics, and then staff can report that information back to you, and then you all can make some intelligent choices about how it is. 1, if you want to participate in a tour at this time. 2, if you do, in what capacity, what does that look like? And then considering the legal implications of any of those choices.
So we need to gather that information to begin with. But I would think it would be best for us to go ahead and do it as soon as we can so that stuff doesn't get taken down, gotten rid of before we've had a look at it.
That's right.
So I think the direction to the HPC administrator is to gather the information from the building owner about the particulars and to communicate that to the commission at the earliest opportunity.
That's what we're directed you to do.
Okay.
It
So,
would be my preference if we could see it as a full commission, if that's possible, because then you've got everyone hearing the same thing at the same time. There's no discussions that haven't been shared with everyone at the same time, so I just wanted to put that out there. If it's possible, I realize that it may not be, but.
so that would essentially amount to a special called meeting. So we have, 2 days essentially ahead of time?
48 hours notice.
we have to post it to the public. And so that's not impossible. We can do that if you prefer to do that.
So you're
I'd
talking about a
really
call
suggest we
meeting
take
being the
council's
call
advice.
meeting that we're gonna go down there?
Yes,
Okay, so the meeting's actually gonna be down there and not here?
that's correct.
Okay.
And if we do that, we have to allow other people, anyone who wants to come along?
It's a public
We do it
meeting,
as a group.
meaning that it's open to the public.
Just
Yeah, I-
like people sitting out here
Yeah.
today would just come along
mean,
with us.
It is I haven't been in it very recently, but it is a building under construction.
So the applicant is requesting this, right? So the owners are requesting this. So the owners, I suppose, would be requested to provide some kind of liability waiver for everyone that's in attendance.
That's a conversation that those are logistics that need to be worked out.
Those are some of
That's
the
right.
details we
Yeah.
need to find out about.
Matt, I mean, I really would suggest we follow council's advice on size, tour size, and not have because you could make offhand comments that sound like a decision.
Keep it under a quorum.
Yeah, I'd recommend.
And just to clarify that statement so that anyone who's listening will understand my intention, if you're considering going to an active construction site, large groups of people could be a precarious situation, and doing it in small groups will allow you to go at your leisure whenever your schedules might allow, and might mitigate some of the hazards. I don't know the extent of the construction that's going on in the building. It could be
There's some really
substantial.
hazardous areas in there. You wouldn't want people climbing around.
And it may be that we don't want you all climbing around, I don't know. But that's these are logistics that I think the commission has directed staff to investigate.
So I would at least like to know, though, if first of all, anybody who believes they will not be able to go.
Yeah, I'm not available that day.
Okay.
What day of the week is that?
It's,
I'm not available that time. I could come earlier in the day, but I'm not available on that Monday.
so you're available earlier in the day?
Yeah, I would be available like 11:30 to 12:30, but not 2:30.
Okay.
So is the owner obligated to tour all of us, or
As many of you that want to go.
I would like to go,
Yes, so.
and I can do that
So
time.
that was going to be my next one. Does anybody know that you really would want to go and are available that day?
I'm available all day, but,
Tony?
yeah.
All
But then
day?
I think it's up to the owner for how many he wants to tour and how often he wants to tour as well.
So, they're requesting this designation, and you all will be deciding on that designation as a recommendation in the process to the alderman. So, it would seem like it's in their best interest to allow and encourage as many of you as possible.
Well, and if that needs to be in smaller groups, then it needs to be done more than one time, because
That's
if
right.
we're all, as you said, we all eventually
That's
down the
correct.
road are gonna vote on it. So we
as-
all need to have seen what it is
That's
that
right.
we're going to vote on.
And as they've suggested 2:30, maybe we will have one group at 2:30, but maybe another one, say, at 11:30.
Yeah.
So, anyone else? Maybe Candace?
I'm available. I'll just make either time available.
Okay. Tim?
I can be available.
What's that?
I can be available.
Okay. Jim?
Anytime.
Yes.
Annette?
Anytime.
All right. And then we'll ask Molly too, assuming she's sworn in by then. All right.
Okay,
Excellent.
any other items at this time? Okay, we have a motion to adjourn.
So move.
We have a second?
Second.
Second, right beside it. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None? We're adjourned.